is to complete the ring. Each one weighs 26 tons, and since it's what the engineers call an eccentric lift, it's another case of using very slow hoist speeds. The cutout on the fins is 14 feet wide, and a revolving donut-shaped deck will finally sit in this cutout. Now the first ring section is in place, and a steelman salutes you from the same position as a restaurant customer walking over to his table a few months hence. While field crews work only one shift in the Space Needle erection, the unusual demands of the job often call for overtime. For example, with a slow and difficult lift like this, they may get hung up. At times, it's almost dark before they can make a section secure and call it a day. As the sections move up and into position, one by one, the never-ending job of bolting and welding continues. A total of 146,000 pounds of welding rod was used on this job, nearly 40,000 pounds in the field work alone. When the work inside a girder is completed, the top plate goes on for final welding. And here you see the close quarters for a welder inside a box leg. Down below, Chief Seattle seems to approve the project. One ring section is left out, an open piece in the pie, until the last core sections are raised. Rail brackets for the permanent Space Needle elevators protrude from these final sections. Throughout the entire construction period, safety meetings are held once each week. And although the steel workers' performance keeps all Seattle goggle-eyed for months, the safety record on the job is unbeatable. Now the tower is almost ready for top house construction above the 500-foot level. The final girder section is raised to close the restaurant ring, but the last 7 cantilevered fins are still missing because there's a lot of lifting that remains for the derrick after it's made the last jump. After the pie is closed, everything else will have to go up by elevator. Corrugated decking, a subfloor at the restaurant level, goes on as a safety precaution during the work that follows. Along with safety on the job, safety of the structure was a primary consideration all the way, beginning with early wind tunnel tests and continuing now with X-ray inspection of welds. The X-ray work is done at night after the regular crew is gone. Now a construction elevator is on the job, giving inspection teams a preview of the Space Needle ride, and they can also see what millions of tourists will see from the tower at night in the months and years to come. There isn't much time for that right now. As lighter steel members for top house construction are raised to the job, time can be saved with 3 on 1 line, and time is the essence. The deadline gets closer every day. As the basic structure for the restaurant takes shape, temporary supports for the roof girders are replaced with permanent columns. Now the turntable for the restaurant's revolving floor comes up in 8 sections. Made by Western Gear Works, the turntable has wheels that roll on a track, and so easily that it takes only a 1-horsepower motor to turn the revolving deck, tables, diners, and all. Back in the shop, they're matching the sections of the mezzanine ring for the 2nd story of the top house. The sections, 35 feet long and 9 feet 9 inches high, will form an area to contain part of the kitchen space for the restaurant and also some of the mechanical equipment for this fantastic structure. The final section moves into place. These men are working more than 500 feet above the streets of Seattle. Here's how it looks from a helicopter when the mezzanine ring is completed and the crew is about ready to begin work on the observation platform. Pacific Car and Foundry Company's Structural Steel Division, and no other fabricator and erector for that matter, has ever constructed anything like this before on such a limited time schedule. The engineering skill and the ingenuity of an experienced team are put to some real tests. But they're meeting the once-in-a-lifetime challenge with enthusiasm as well as skill, at the drawing boards, in the shop, and out on the job site. The company may never place steel 600 feet in the air again, but Pacific Car and Foundry Company steel has long played a role in the development of the Pacific Northwest, particularly in the region's vast hydroelectric projects, going back to the construction of Grand Coulee Dam on the Columbia River. In fact, structural steel from Pacific Car and Foundry may be found in all the 11 western states and overseas. With the Seattle World's Fair of 1962 still about 5 months away, the structural steel work on the Space Needle nears completion, towering above the Washington State Coliseum on the ground below. Before the derrick crane is released from duty, it's called upon to lift all the heavy equipment that goes into the tower's 5-story top house. Now one of the motors for the Space Needle's 3 elevators is lifted to the top. And the last lift of all is the stainless steel beacon, the point of the needle. Following the ironworkers' tradition, the flag goes on top. The crew sets the gas-lit beacon on a special platform over to one side, where it remains until all other work is finished. Finally, on December 10th, they're ready to begin lowering the hard-working derrick. This operation alone is a big job. The bracing is removed on one side of the core, and the crane slipped out. The boom comes out through the hole first. Inching down the long way to the ground, at times the crane is moved through elevator openings that provide less than an inch of clearance. The work begins on a quiet day, but before the job is finished, a storm blows in and gives the crews another rough moment on the job. With wind velocities up to almost 60 miles an hour, crews tie the derrick off the side. Chased from the tower, they wait for the wind to subside. But finally, on December 18th, the last of the derrick reaches the ground. 5.5 months after the first core sections came to the site, a job completed in record time and without one single lost time accident. For this achievement, the governor presents the company and the ironworkers this safety award. The president of the Ironworkers Union comes out from St. Louis to accept on behalf of the union. The steel workers are gone now, and the World's Fair is underway. Between the gleaming white space Gothic arches of the United States Science Pavilion and America's first high-speed transit monorail, the Space Needle stands as the dominant symbol of the fair and a permanent symbol of the city. Thousands of tourists ride up the elevators each day, riding outside the core of the tower and looking through vision points on the world below. In 45 seconds, they're on the observation deck, with a full sweeping view from the Cascade Mountains on the east to the Olympics on the west. and a magnificent view of a city surrounded by water. All systems working A-OK. The Space Needle is launched.